we insisted as South Africa since 2013 that our version of BRICS has to include the continent, because there's no solutions that will obey the logic of our border. Development has to be Pan-African. So we've included African colleagues in our deliberations. And so SADC especially, to start with. Now, this time around as well, we have brought in as many as possible from the continent to participate here in the Academic Forum and to advise us as a think tank council about what policies would be acceptable, yes or no. So the same happened in China. China had their own regional and global concerns, so they invited whom they wanted. Brazil did a Latin American outreach. So we would like to see the BRICS assisting, facilitating, helping, whatever way, African development agendas. And we would like to see Africa playing a role in defining the agendas, what is necessary. So we're learning as we go along. It's not that, in a sense, the continent had a strong development agenda by 2005 to 2008. It seemed that there was consensus around industrialization, around meeting all kinds of goals, and there came the 2063 agenda. So the continent is beginning to put itself on a development path that BRICS can support in interesting ways. Then you start looking, a neglected continent. Investment was flowing out of the African continent. And all of a sudden, something's changed. There is growth of the continent. And it's not only the money that comes from diasporic networks that propels that development. It's not only state resources that are going in. There's energy, and the energy has to do with some of the BRICS countries beginning to get involved very seriously on the continent.
It brings me to my next question about other achievements over the past 10 years that BRICS has been able to do as a unit.
Well, I think there's at least 4 things, that 3 of which are not very visible. The fact that the countries' leaderships are speaking creates a common voice on all the platforms that make decisions these days. And whether it's the United Nations, whether it is the G20, whether it's the World Economic Forum, and so on, you have a kind of a uniformity of voice despite our differences, but that is not something that's very, very, very visible. Secondly, where there has been incredible progress is agreement that it has to be an inclusive growth, whatever happens. That growth for growth's sake is, as we said, is the philosophy of cancer cells. It's not a philosophy that we aspire towards. We want to see inclusive growth. We want to see the inequalities that define some of our countries be redressed. Everybody supports that. The third important step is to get the cooperation going. There's no government department that doesn't have a BRICS project at the moment and is not relating to it. But all our academic institutions are relating. All our scientific councils are relating. All our researchers, our lecturers, and so on, and civil society organizations are beginning to relate. So this kind of an invisible and not newsworthy type of activity is going on. The fourth one is these discussions now are leading to the next phase. And now from South Africa's perspective, we hope now, in July, 2 things are coming to place. The first one would be this attempt to pool our knowledge and our research and development together to develop vaccines for all the diseases that afflict our poor. They're not profitable for the big companies to develop any of those vaccines. But we want to take the responsibility and lead in that, like in the issue of the New Development Bank, to be able to do strong health interventions in the near future. The other dimension, in terms of inclusion, we think that women have to be a track with their own voice in the BRICS domain.
I want you to elaborate on other challenges that are faced when trying to create this common relationship between the developing nations of the world.
Well, the major challenge, okay, there's thinking fast. Let me say that it's three. Firstly is putting the appropriate resources in the appropriate programs. South Africa is not a poor country. It's an unjust country. The inequality is indefensible. There are resources. We need to put them in the right spaces for our people to enjoy the well-being that they deserved since 1994. So that getting the right resources into the right programs is absolutely vital. Secondly, we do not have a single solution possible, as I said earlier on, unless it is SADC-wide to start with because of logistics and distances, but it has to move further. You know, there's further because any problem we encounter has to do with our immersion and existence, both as a magnet, a negative and positive pole of a magnet in terms of the rest of the continent. We don't want to develop our university system at the expense of Makerere in Kampala. We don't want to develop at the expense of Ife in Nigeria. We need to work together in new ways. Now, in order to do that, we have to look at logistics. It is cheaper to get to Paris and to get to London than it is to get to Accra at the moment. In other words, that's what I mean by pathways. We have to reconfigure our continent in new ways so we can really allow ourselves to move around, freely learn from each other and so on. So, you know, we, at the same time, we are opening the possibilities with this free trade agreement. In principle, at the same time, we burn trucks because they're being driven by foreigners. You know, so we have to understand that there has to be an understanding of the need of African pathways. We need to move around. We need to move out of the apartheid kind of blinkers that said you were born there, and you can only move there, and you can only work for so-and-so, and that's now your usufruct, and you can't let anyone else in there. So it's important. Thirdly, is to create the channels for people's voices to be heard properly around development issues. You know, there's a lot of wisdom down there, a lot of ad hocery is happening, with a lot of inventiveness, both in the informal settlements and in the countryside. We can't ride roughshod over people and say, we bring you the latest pill from China. All you have to do is swallow it and you'll be rich tomorrow. I mean, you know, can't do that. A lot of the protests, a lot of the service delivery challenges that we're facing is that people are saying that you're not being heard, and therefore we're going to make you listen. And so, you know, we have to respond to this demand for voice. So obviously the vote is not enough. Obviously other things have to come into place. Now, what's the best practice there? How do we make sure that our development is people-centered, people-sensitive, and our ears are geared to what people are saying? So those are the kind of challenges that I think will be crucial for us in the future. Mm-hmm. So how to turn an unjust society into something that provides, as the slogans say, equal opportunities for all. So those are the challenges.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, an example of lessons that South Africa has successfully learned from its BRICS counterparts.
Well, it has learned a lot around from the Bolsa Familia thing in Brazil in terms of grants. We have not managed to go to their level yet, and we are learning about the way they distribute the grants. It's much more effective than ours. And ours is in a bit of a crisis at the moment as we speak. But the lessons are there, are very clear. The lesson in India is how do you have one of the most complex societies linguistically, cohering as a democracy in a vast country like that? How do their systems operate? We're beginning to understand that the Indian democracy is resilient despite the tensions and the conflicts and the madness that might be happening over election time. Is resilient. Our democracy is new. We need to understand how to do the real multilingual kind of approach to our development. From China, we're learning decisiveness. What is it? If you have to have a clear vision, you have to study carefully the obstacles that block you and constrain you from reaching that, and then you get your crack teams to work on those obstacles. In order for that, so it's not just throwing money at it. You need to throw money at this problem, that problem, that problem, that problem, and then it will come together. So it's different things from different people, and then at the level of the funding of development, we expect the new development bank to make a difference. So that's where you should keep your eyes focused on that, its successes and failures, because any major development in any direction needs those original resources to get it going. We promised people in the BRICS domain, and there's lots of people, as we said there, that we're not doing what the World Bank did. We're not doing what the IMF did. We're going to be doing something new. And this thing new is precisely just to create that capacity for us to move forward. And you journalists better keep us in check. So that's what the examples